Hi friends, my name is Nataraj. In other video, I have discussed about how to develop first Java web application by having Servlet component as the web component. We completed certain steps in that. We have seen how to create deployment directory structure, and we have seen what is need of following the directory structure. And later I have started talking about how to develop the Servlet component, and here is the code. Here you can see that code. Okay, so what I said, there are three approaches to develop the Servlet, and the best approach is extending from what? HTTP Servlet. But since it's the first application, here I am developing my Servlet component extending from generic Servlet. Generic means not specific to any protocol. Generic medicine, unbranded medicine. Generic Servlet, not specific to any protocol. But it doesn't mean it cannot take what? Protocol HTTP request. It can take HTTP protocol request. Okay. But we cannot enjoy specific features that are there in protocol HTTP, something like auto refresh. So that's why if you want such features also, go for developing your Servlet component by extending from HTTP Servlet. But since this is our first component, that's why I decided to give one example on what? Extending from generic Servlet, so that in future I can compare what we are getting in HTTP Servlet, what we are not getting in generic Servlet. So that's why in this example I am planning to develop my Servlet component by extending from generic Servlet class. Next one, our class must be taken as a public class. Why, sir? Who creates our Servlet class object? Container. Who manages lifecycle? Container. For that, what is most important? Loading class and creating object. Container and our Servlet component class will not be there in the same package, but still my class should be visible and accessible for what? Container. Which classes are visible inside and outside the packages? Public classes. That's why we must take our Servlet component class as what? Public class, in order to make our Servlet component class visible and accessible to Servlet container. Then only it can load the class and it can what? Instantiate the class. Instantiation is nothing but object creation. And this generic Servlet is having one abstract method, that is public void service, taking Servlet request and Servlet response. Okay, so this is the method that executes for every request. If you give 1000 requests to Servlet component, container may create only one object of our Servlet class, but on that object it will call service method for what? 1000 times. It will call service method for what? 1000 times. No second thought in that. So let's go for how to do this one. Set response content type, res dot. All these methods are ready-made methods, invocable on request and response objects. If you want, you can work with other class methods also, but this method what I am going to call is set content type, is a predefined method which is invocable on what? Response object. So response dot set content type, text slash HTML. Text slash HTML. This is called content type, also called MIME type. MIME type means multi-purpose internet mail extension. What is this? Text slash HTML is actually called what? Content type, also called MIME type. When I say MIME type, multi-purpose internet mail extension. What is the use of it? We are calling this method on response object. This response object gives instruction to browser through web server and Servlet container. Where it gives instruction? Browser. Through what? Web server and Servlet container, to display received output in certain format. To display received output in certain format. What it says, sir? We are instructing browser, hey browser, whenever you receive any output, display it as what? HTML code based text document. HTML code based text document. That means indirectly we are requesting browser. Indirectly we are requesting browser, hey browser, please recognize what? HTML tags that are coming along with the response, and recognize them and give what? Relative effect in the web page display. So final conclusion is, this method gives instruction to browser through web server and Servlet container to display the received output in the form of what? HTML code based text document. Get PrintWriter object. A good standard, in real time or as part of Java coding standards, it's always recommended to declare local variables at the top of the method definition. What's the problem, sir? For better visibility. Why? In what way it is good? For example, if I declare a variable inside a try block that is there in the method definition, I cannot use that variable outside the try block. If I declare such variables at the top of the method definition, I can use in various places of what? Method definition. I can use in different places of what? Method definition. I need not to think whether that variable is visible or not in method definition, whether that can be used outside the if block or not, outside the try block or not. I need not to think. That's why keep a good habit of what? Declare all the variable at the top of what? Method definition. Please declare all the variables at the top of method definition. What is that? PrintWriter PW is equal to null. PrintWriter PW is equal to null. Tell me what is this? PW is equal to res dot getWriter. GetWriter is the method that is invoked on response object and that returns what? PrintWriter object. That object we are referring by using what? Reference variable whose type is PrintWriter. This method returns PrintWriter object and we are referring that object by using what? Reference variable PW whose type is again PrintWriter. Clarity number 1. We are not creating PrintWriter object. This method collects the PrintWriter object that is already there in what? Come on. Response object. That is there in response object and returns that object. And we are referring that object by using what? PW, which is the reference variable of type PrintWriter. Okay, you know that PrintWriter is a stream. Stream is a continuous flow of data. It can be used to write data to destination, to read data from destination. This is a writer stream. That means we use it for writing operation. We use it for what? Sending data. You know that any stream will have a destination, so that we can write data to destination, we can read data from destination. Destination could be a file, could be an object, could be an array. Generally, most of the time we feel destination is only file. No, for a stream, destination can be a file, destination can be an object, destination can be an array also. So PrintWriter is a stream, okay, that is accessed to your servlet component pointing to response object as the destination object. Interesting thing is something like this. Let us feel this is our response object. This is our what? Response object. Who creates this object? Container. Inside this what object is there? PrintWriter object. Inside this what object is there? PrintWriter object is there. Fine. Here is my servlet component. What is our servlet component? Date servlet is our servlet component. Service method. I'm just explaining the current situation, nothing else. Here we are having what? Reference variable PrintWriter. This PrintWriter points to what? Points to response object. But how we will get this PrintWriter? When we call getWriter method. What method? GetWriter method. Res dot getWriter. Let's see. PrintWriter is a built-in object inside the response object. Readily available object inside the response object. When we call res dot getWriter, we will get that PrintWriter object to servlet component referred by PW reference variable. Every stream will have a destination. So for PrintWriter also destination object is there. What is the destination? Response object. So now onwards, if I try to write any data, it will be written to whom? Response object. If I write any data by using PrintWriter, it will go to what? Response object. It's something like this here. We are not creating stream from the scratch. Stream is already there in response object. We are accessing that one to servlet component. Thing is, every stream will have a destination, and this stream destination is what? Response object. So whenever servlet component uses this stream, it will write the message to what? Response object. For example, let us assume in service method I said pw.println hello. pw.println hello. See, PrintWriter stream is now pointing to response object as the destination. Since I said println hello, println writes the message to what? Destination place from the PrintWriter stream. So that means it writes hello message to what? Response object. What's the overall meaning of this? pw.println takes the given message, writes to response object. Response object writes to container. Container writes to web server. Web server writes to browser, and browser displays it as a content of the web page. So finally, what is the theory? If I give some output to response object writes to container. Container gives to web server. Web server sends to browser as what? Response. And browser takes the response and displays the web page. But the question is how to give data to response object. The two from servlet component. Definitely we have to take a stream. What stream? PrintWriter stream. But I don't want to create that stream. Why? Response object is already having that stream. I want to access it. How to access is GetWriter. Where it is accessed? To servlet. So even though it is accessed to servlet component, every stream will have a destination for this readily available PrintWriter. Who is the destination? Response object. So what happens? I can use that stream to write output to what? Response object. So when I say pw.println, system.out.println writes to console monitor, because system.out is the stream pointing to what? Console monitor as the destination. So here PrintWriter is the stream pointing to what? Response object as the destination. So when I call pw.println, where it writes the message? Response object. What response object will do? Gives to container. Container gives to whom? Web server. Web server gives to whom? Browser. And browser displays in the form of web page content. Internally many other things will happen, but according to the maturity you are having currently, I am just explaining the overall high level view of what this entire process. Generally what we do, we create a stream with new keyword on our own pointing to destination, and we write data to destination using stream. But here we don't want to do that. Why? PrintWriter is the stream that is already there in response object. Then why should I create? Don't create. But it is there in response object. But where we need it? In the servlet component. How to get access to that stream? What is that? GetWriter. It gives access to that stream. Fine. So then what you want to do with that stream? Write something to response object. Why we want to write to response object? Because response object can write to container, server and to what? Browser indirectly. What is the guarantee PrintWriter will write to what? Response object? PrintWriter is already created stream that is there in response object, and though it is there inside the response object, it always contains response object as the destination, because already created stream, destination is already decided. What is the destination? Response object. So when it is accessed to servlet component, its destination changes? No. So its destination is still what? Response object. So that's why whenever we say pw.println, PrintWriter stream now pointing to response object. So pw.println writes to response object. So like this, okay, PrintWriter stream is doing its work. It's something like this here. We need a stream to write to data to response object being from servlet. Luckily that stream is already there in response object. Access it. Though it is access to servlet component, its destination never changes. Its destination is what? Response object. That's why we use that stream in servlet component, which is nothing but PrintWriter, to write the messages to response object. The fact is, the stream collected from response object, he is having response object as the destination, so that we use that stream in our servlet component to write messages to what? Response object. If I take one real life example to explain this, it is something like collecting money from father's pocket and giving gift to father. To purchase gift, what is required? Money is required. Money is collected from whom? Father's pocket. By whom? You. Gift is given to whom? Again father. Similarly, to write data to response object, what is required? PrintWriter. How you are getting it? From response object. After getting into Servlet component, where you are writing? Again to response object. So that means PrintWriter collected from response object to Servlet component is used to write the data to what? Response object. Money gathered from father by you, and you again spend that money to give token of gift to father. So same thing here also. Only the thing you have to concentrate here is, so far maybe while learning C language or fundamentals of Java, you are in the psychological feeling. Stream means destination should be file, but not compulsory. Stream can have file as the destination, object as the destination, array as the destination, lot of things as the destination. So here for PrintWriter stream, which is already there in response object, destination is what? Response object. So when we access to Servlet component, still destination remains as what? Response object. That's why we write data to what? Response object. So that's a big story related to what? PrintWriter. Interviewer definitely put question on this, because so many people just ignores internals of this particular method call. Response.getWriter gives response object. No, it gives response object collected from response object whose destination is what? Response object. Okay, that's why we can use that stream whenever we want to write the content to what? Response object. Fine. Then write request processing logic. Write what? Request processing logic. I said no, service method is there to process the request to generate the response. Right now, what is my request processing logic? What I assumed in the beginning, Servlet component should give current date and time as the response. So current date and time means I can get through date is equal to null. Date is equal to new date of. Here I created date class object. Here I am seriously creating what? Date class object. pw.println write output to response object. You write output to response object. Response object writes to whom? Container. Container gives to what? Web server. Web server sends to browser. Browser displays as the content of the web page. So here pw.println. Println. Don't think that every println should write to console monitor. System.out.println. System.out is a built-in stream pointing to console monitor. That's why it will write to what? Console. But here PrintWriter is the stream pointing to response object as the destination object. That's why this pw.println writes the messages to response object. Here don't look at println, look at what? On which object it is called. It is called on PrintWriter PW. That's why it will write to response object, because PrintWriter is the stream pointing to response object as the destination object. There system.out.println. System.out is the built-in stream pointing to console monitor. That's why that println method writes to console monitor. Analyze. So pw.println. Yes, H1. You can use style attribute to apply the styles. And I want to see this is coming in the center of the page. So that's why I use align colon center. Yeah, since double quotes in Java are string double quotes, represent strings. But whenever you want to keep quotes for attribute values of HTML tags or any other technology tags, don't use double quotes, prefer using what? Single quotes. So that that clash between Java double quotes and attribute double quotes will not be there. So you know that HTML is not a strictly typed language. Even though you don't keep quotes, no problem. Even though you don't keep double quotes, no problem. Any quotes, no problem, because it's not a strictly typed language. What do you mean by not a strictly typed language? You need not to follow rules seriously while developing what? Code. If you write wrong tags also, it ignore them. It takes just right tags. That means HTML is a loosely typed language. Servlet, JSP, Java, C++, all this comes under, this programming comes under what? Strictly typed programming. You like it or not it, you have to follow the rules. If you don't follow the rules, compiler will throw error. HTML is not like that. Even though you do mistakes, okay, syntactical mistake, even though you use unknown tags or unknown attributes, it just simply ignores them, takes remaining things. That's the reason I generally say HTML is like mother, because for mother, son is always kid. Even though son has got his own sons also, mother treats son as what? Kid only. But Java, C, C++, these languages are like what? Strictly typed. That's why I call them as father kind of thing. Father is always strict. Once you grow up, he always says you have to understand the responsibilities. Mother always treat you as a kid only. So that's why HTML is like what? Mother. And C, C++, Java are like what? Father. Very strict towards programming. So fine, in Java, double quotes are having string meaning. But I cannot use same double quotes for what? Attributes of HTML tags, especially when I am placing HTML tags in Servlet programming. That's why I prefer taking what? Single quote. Here I will write a label, date and time plus date. This is the variable where I am holding system date. And here I am interested to go for closing H1. Yes, we have written output to response object. pw.println writes to response object writes to container gives to what? Server gives to browser displays it. Then close stream, you have to close the stream. pw.close. It is a good practice to close the stream at the end of the utilization, because the stream is like a water tap. Once utilization is over, it's better to stop the tap, no doubt in that. Because stream is a continuous flow of data. Once utilization, it's better to stop the tap, okay? And one more thing here, pw.close not only close the stream, it commits the response. Commits the response means what? It tells to response object, this is the final output that you have to send to what? Container, you have to send to server, and it has to send to what? Browser. That means after this, it does not allow to add further output to response object, at least from this Servlet component. So that means not only it closes the stream, it also informs to response object, this is full and final response that has been committed. Then response object realizes, oh, whatever output I got from PrintWriter stream, it will start delivering to what? Browser through container and server. Then this is the end of what method? Service method. Let me save. As I said, I saved in which place here? Date app, web.inf, classes, date servlet. Classes, date servlet. This is the place where I saved it. I am following deployment directory structure. Next one is compile servlet component. Compile servlet component. Date servlet dot java. Why should I compile? Sir, you said na container will take care of everything. Container will take care of everything only when you supply dot class file. But right now what we had prepared is what? Dot java file. So generating dot class file is our responsibility. Container take care of life cycle means not from compilation onwards. Once if you give dot class file, remaining process it will take care. What is remaining process? Loading class, creating object, managing object, destroying object. Whenever need is there, calling various methods like service method. That part will be taken care by container, but you have to supply dot class file. I have to compile it. But I cannot compile directly here. Why? Because while learning other core Java classes, in core Java classes or your basic Java classes, you have used only those classes that are there in JDK. JDK is installable one. Along with those classes will come. Compiler happily recognizes during compilation, happily recognizes during execution. But in my servlet component, I am seriously using what? Generic servlet, servlet request, servlet response, this kind of things. Since I am using these things, they belongs to Servlet API. Servlet API is not part of JDK software. That's unfortunate thing. Servlet API is a separate one, which generally comes in the form of jar file. Okay, which generally comes in the form of what? Jar file. Okay, along with what? Tomcat server installation. What is that jar file? Servlet-api.jar file. What is that here? Servlet-api.jar. That's why in the process of compiling Servlet, first what you have to do, you know, make sure that Tomcat Tomcat home -lib slash servlet API.jar file to class path. Added to what? Class path. Why, sir? Our Servlet component is using Servlet API. Servlet API is not part of JDK software. Servlet API is part of JW module. JW module is not installable. But when we install JW module based softwares like web server, application server like Tomcat, they supply jar file having various technology APIs. In Tomcat server, in Tomcat home /lib/ servlet API.jar file, entire servlet API is there. If you want to use API of a jar file in your servlet component, if you want to use API of jar file in our what? Servlet component, so definitely we need to what? Add that jar file to class path. Definitely we need to add jar file to what? Class path. No doubt in that. So that's the reason before compilation I should make sure that that jar file is there in what? Class path. Sir, if you feel adding jar file is very complex, or copy jar file to java home /lib/ext folder. I think it is there in JRE/lib/ext folder. Either you can add in the class path or you can copy to what? ext folder. So first I will give procedure of adding to class path. How to add it? Very simple. My computer, you have to open properties. Here we have advanced system settings. There we got environment variables. Yes, we have to take, generally prefer taking system variables. Yes, there you take variable name, class path, take value. You have to find out the location of the jar file, you have to add it. My suggestion is not to mug up these locations or not to type manually. Just collect from address bar and start using them. Copy the address from address bar and say paste. Semicolon dot is required. Dot represents current directory. That means I am requesting Java tools not only look for given API in this jar file, also look in the current directory also. Current directory means the directory from where that tool is being used. If tool is used in X folder, not only in this jar file, it looks for certain API in the current directory also. Fine, this is the way to do it. So let me show it practically. So I have gone to this folder, lib folder. Somehow I got jar file. Copy this. Go to my computer or PC kind of thing. Advanced system settings. Go to environment variable. So don't touch user variables because they are specific to one Windows user. Prefer taking what? System variables. There we already got class path. It is not case sensitive. Luckily there, but on satisfaction basis, let me add one more time. So even I can remove all the values here, not compulsory, all the values are required. Yes. So let me say new paste. So if you have this option, no need of keeping semicolon. Yeah, if you are interested, you can keep semicolon like this, but actually not required. It automatically takes. Done. Okay. Sir, how to confirm whether really jar is added or not? Very simple. Go to command prompt. Just type one thing. Java p java x dot servlet dot generic servlet. Yes, we got output like this, giving various methods that are there in generic servlet. I can say jar is perfectly added to class path. If you are saying that cannot find symbol, cannot resolve, this kind of error means some problem is there towards adding jar file to class path. So that's why you should always make sure, okay, whether jar is added properly or not by trying to get one or other details about Servlet API class. Java P is a built-in tool which is Java profiler. It gives, try to fetch the profile of the class. So that means we have successfully added jar file to class path. We are all set to compile the Servlet component. But if you look at our Servlet component, we have used a lot of things, but we forgot to write package imports. Technically speaking, you should write these package imports along with the development. But somehow we were concentrating on some other thing. In that process, we forgot to add package import statement. Let me import the packages. Java x.servlet.star. It is for Servlet API. Servlet API means generic Servlet class, Servlet request interface, Servlet response interface, Servlet exception class. Right. Another one is java.io.star. It is for IO streams. IO streams. Then what? Java.util.star. It is for utility packages. So these are the various things here regarding our what? Servlet component. Now we are all set for compilation. So let me give my next point, compile it. Within the D step, B is what? Compile Servlet. Yeah, you have to go there where it is originally saved. What is this? Date app. There we have web.inf folder. In that we have classes folder. Yeah, we have taken package. Don't forget, we have taken a package. So that's why java c-d space dot date servlet dot java space dot date servlet dot java. Here space, here space, here space. What is need of dot? Anyhow, it will create a package because we used -d option, but we are just telling the location where that package should be created. I am requesting to create the package in the current directory. You know that dot indicates current directory, dot indicates what? Parent directory. I am requesting to create package in the current directory itself. Fine, we'll get into that deployment directory structure now. So where is that? E drive. In that E drive we have date app. In that one web.inf. In that one what? Classes. So just go to command prompt. In Windows 8 onwards we got a new feature. That is feature once. You need not to open command prompt separately and need not to navigate to your choice folder. Go to the address bar and say cmd. It will show command prompt pointing to the current directory where that cmd is typed. So let me compile it. Java c-d date servlet.java. Yes. Compilation is really done. Okay. Com package, nt package, servlet package. Here we got date servlet dot class. Here we got what? Date servlet dot class. That's it. So compilation is done. Look at the complete directory structure now. So we have a date app under this web.inf, under this classes. This is .java file. Here is what? .java, .class file. So now what is left here? We need to develop web.xml file. Okay. We need to develop what? Web.xml file. So let me give my step, develop web.xml file as web applications configuration file. As web applications configuration file. Let's try to understand, okay, how to develop this web.xml file. First we'll try to understand why to develop this web.xml, what is need of it. Servlet container recognizes only those Java classes as what? Web components or Servlet component whose details are placed in web.xml file. This is technically called Servlet configuration, and every Servlet must be configured in web.xml. If not configured, server will not recognize that servlet. Even though it is there in classes folder, even though that web application is deployed in server, even though that web application is recognized by servlet container does not recognize class of the classes folder as what? Servlet component, unless until you configure it in what? Web.xml file. Until unless you configure it in what? Web.xml file. So that's why servlet configuration in web.xml file is compulsory. Otherwise, even though it is there in web application, web server, that class will not be recognized by container as servlet component. Container takes that ordinary class. To tell that it is not ordinary class, it is a servlet component, and to tell to container, recognize and manage its life cycle, you have to configure that servlet component class in what? Web.xml file. No second thought in that. There is no other alternate also. Maybe it is possible through annotations, we can avoid it, but there also you are doing configuration. Configuration is compulsory. Sometimes we do through XML, sometimes we do through annotation, but servlet configuration is compulsory. Container is not ready to take every class as servlet component here. It will take only those classes as servlet component that are configured in web.xml file. What do you mean by servlet configuration? Writing more details about a class in web.xml to make servlet container recognizing that component as what, or that class as what. Servlet component is called what? Servlet configuration. Let me take one real life example to understand this one nicely. There is an office. In that office, one boss is there. He is having his own room, AC room kind of thing. By sitting in this room, he passed on message to employee. Hey, you are there in so and so building, in so and so department. Hey, today at 4 o'clock you come and meet me. Employee goes there. Employee definitely goes to office boss building. Because boss means big office will be there, front office will be there, waiting room will be there. You just gone there and started waiting for boss in the waiting room. You didn't inform to anyone that you are coming. Okay, you are waiting in the waiting room. Boss is waiting for you inside the room. What's the use of that? What's the use of that? You think that boss will recognize you and he will call you. And boss thinking that once you come, you will inform him so that he can recognize your arrival and he can call him. He's thinking to call you. So because of this communication, boss waits inside the room, you wait outside the room. Total time will be wasted. So that's why what you have to do. The moment you go to boss office, you have to tell to front office people or receptionist or PA of the office, PA of the boss. I'm so and so, okay, I came here to meet the boss because boss has given appointment at this time. Then what happens? That PA or receptionist will pass the message to boss and boss start recognizing your arrival. Then you will go there and you will have discussion kind of thing. That means if you don't inform to receptionist or PA, boss is not going to aware of, yes, you have come and you have come for certain work. Even though boss asked you to come and meet, but how boss knows your arrival? So for that reason, going to boss building is not important. You have to inform the boss, okay, yes, okay, I have been called by boss and boss, I want to meet the boss. Then boss will recognize your arrival. Similarly, if you place servlet component in web application in classes folder, .class file, .java file, waste. Unless until it is configured in what? Web.xml file, servlet container is not going to recognize it. Sir, web.xml file name is fixed? Yes, fixed. Web.inf folder name, classes folder name, web.xml file name, fixed. What are the things which are our choice, sir? Web root folder name, the .app is our choice, and servlet component .java file name and .class file name our choice, and the package name where we want to see our servlet component, that is also our choice. So that means in this entire deployment directory structure, our choice, location is our choice, fixed, our choice, package name is our choice, class name is our choice, web.xml file name is fixed. Right. Sir, what you write when you want to configure servlet component in web.xml? In web.xml, we place servlet component configuration having minimum 3 details. A. Servlet logical name. B. Fully qualified fully qualified servlet component class name. Nothing. Fully qualified means class name with the package name. C URL pattern. URL pattern. One thing you remember, once a servlet is placed in web application is running in web server, mark my word, servlet component is not identified with its logical name, not identified with its fully qualified class name. It is identified only with what? URL pattern. That means while giving request, you have to use URL pattern. While giving request, we type URL in the browser address bar, you have to use URL pattern. To make one component talking to another component, if another component is servlet, the first component should not try to identify second component, nothing but servlet component based on its what? Class name or logical name. It should be identified based on its what? URL pattern. So overall, within the web application, inside the server, outside the server, within the container, outside the container, officially servlet is identified with its what? URL pattern. It's something like this. You might be having a lot of nicknames, pet names, some official pet names, some unofficial pet names, but you are not identified with those names, boss. Officially identified with your what? Name that is there in birth certificate. If you don't have birth certificate, that is there in your what? 10th standard certificate. There may be a number of things. Similarly, a servlet component is identified with its what? URL pattern. So there is another advantage with URL pattern. In a moment I will talk about that. Okay. So how to develop this web.xml file? Very simple. We have to place this web.xml inside web.inf folder parallel to classes folder. Location is fixed, name is fixed. Its content is your choice, but sir, I never experienced XML so far. Can I write XML? Yes, you can write. Have you got HTML tags? Some tags are there. Somehow they are fixed tags. So maybe 1-2 times it looks quite new, but once you start writing more and more time, it looks very easy. It's not a big thing at all. Others, what I want to develop is what? XML. All right. So XML tags are case sensitive. Code is what? Strictly typed code. Compulsory you have to follow it. Then we have a servlet tag. Under this servlet tag, see, if you feel you cannot type like this, what you can do is, along with the Tomcat software installation, some example web applications have come. You can copy paste from there. Or if you have any reference examples in the internet or what outside, you can collect it. But my suggestion is initial few days better to type on your own. So servlet date, servlet hyphen name. This is logical name. This is logical name. Servlet hyphen class. com.nt.servlet.date servlet. Servlet hyphen class. Servlet. Yeah, listen. Servlet tag and its subtags talks about servlet detail. That means our servlet component details. First tag is called root tag. This is subtag to web app tag. Servlet name is subtag to servlet tag. I can say servlet class and servlet name tags are sibling tags. Sibling means same level tags. You and your brother belonging to same family are called siblings. That means you people are same level people. Your family hierarchy, you and your brother comes under same level. Same level in the hierarchy. That's why you people are called what? Siblings. So servlet name and servlet class tags are called what? Sibling tags. So servlet hyphen mapping. Under this servlet hyphen what? Name. Servlet hyphen what? Name. So under this what? Servlet hyphen name date. Then what is this? URL pattern. URL pattern. URL pattern can be your choice, but it must starts with a slash symbol. So I am taking URL pattern as a test one. What is the use of this URL pattern? Number one, it hides servlet class name from outsiders. Number two, it hides technology that is used in web application development. For example, to give request to servlet, I am not using servlet class name, I am using its URL pattern. URL pattern is what? By seeing test1, can anyone say that website and web component is there in Servlet? No. For example, I have given URL pattern as what? test1.c. By seeing test1.c in the browser address bar, people thinks that this web component is developed in C language. Tell me, C language can be used to develop web component? Really not. So that's why URL pattern is very useful to improve the security on the web application, to hide the Servlet class name, to hide the technology that is used to develop the Servlet component. URL patterns are always awesome. Okay, and every Servlet should be configured with what? URL pattern. Because Servlet is identified with its what? URL pattern. Yes, servlet-mapping. Then end of the root tag. Right now one Servlet component, that's why one thing I configured. If 2-3 Servlets are there, I have to write what? Servlet and Servlet mapping tags for multiple times. Listen, we use Servlet tag to write Servlet component details. We use Servlet mapping tag to write what? Mapping information, that means URL pattern. Because this class is mapped with one URL pattern, that's why Servlet mapping. So that's why mapping details are in Servlet mapping. Servlet details are Servlet tag. So how it gets linked between both tags? That's why the logical name given in what? Servlet tag. Logical name given in Servlet mapping tag must match. Right now only one Servlet mapping, you don't feel that much importance of logical name. Let us assume I have 10 Servlet tag and 10 Servlet mapping tags. And how does each Servlet knows, okay, it has to use so and so URL pattern. It's based on what? Logical name matching only. Logical name matching only. So once again observe, this is logical name. This is fully qualified what? Our Servlet component class name. Definite package name is what? Fully qualified name. Logical name must match with above logical name. URL pattern. Generally URL pattern starts with what? Slash symbol. So now onwards, this Servlet is not identified with its what? Class name. It is identified with its URL pattern called /test1. Here is my E drive. In this E drive, what is this? Date app. In this date app, web.inf. Here I am just giving web because .xml will come automatically. Yes, I want to add it. So now I can say development of the web application is completed. Generally, web application development, deployment, execution, 3 phases are there. Whatever we have done so far in last 3-4 steps, okay, 5 steps, whatever it is, that comes under development. That means we kept a deployment directory structure ready, web components are ready, configuration ready, everything we kept ready. Okay, that's why it comes under development. So what is the use of developing website or web application outside the server? Because if it is outside the server, no one executes it. You have to deploy in the server. So that's why let me give the steps related to deployment. First work you have to do is start Tomcat server. Start Tomcat server. And how to start the Tomcat server? Use Tomcat home/bin directory. Go to Tomcat home/bin directory and try to what? This. So server is already in running mode. Okay, but on safe side, let me show how to start the server nicely. Go to 9 folder, go to bin folder, tomcat9.exe. Tomcat9.exe file. That's nice. So just wait for the message. It is showing already available example application. See, server startup. Then next GH, deploy the web application. What do you mean by deployment here? The process of keeping developed web application in Tomcat server is called what? Deployment. For that one, what should we do? Copy /dateapp folder to /dateapp folder to, because now web application is there in this folder, right? To what is this? Tomcat home/web apps folder. So let me do that work. I'm coming to my data app folder, which is a perfect web application now. Copy this. I'll go to what? Tomcat home folder. In that one we got web apps folder. In that one already available web applications are there. You can check it out. So there I am saying what? Paste. So once it is pasted, you can see in the server console, data app has finished in what? 54 milliseconds. But it's showing there is a problem in what? Servlet name tag. In Web.xml it's saying that what? Properly it is not done. So what I do is, if any exception comes, because if exception comes, delete that. Delete the deployed one. Go to what? The place where you have developed application. Somewhere it is saying that you have not closed servlet-name tag. Fine. Sir, how to find out whether you have done mistakes or not in Web.xml file? Very simple. If you are working with Edit Plus, there is a shortcut key, Control B. If Web.xml comes nicely like this, no problem. If you have done any mistakes, for example, I forgot to write the close tag, because every open tag of XML should have a close tag. If I forgot to close, then if you press Control B, B for Bombay, you will get error. Like this, we can see the mistakes that happened in what? Web.xml file. Once again save, once again Control B, right. So now problems are rectified. So since application is now perfectly ready, so what you have to do? Data app, copy this, say web apps. Don't think that we are doing second time here. First time we deployed, it said that some problems are there. We rectified the problem. After problem again we are redeploying. In first deployment, if no problems are there, there is no need of doing what? This correction and redeployment. Okay. But on safe side, it's always suggested to see the server console. Data app we finished in what? 21 milliseconds. These are old error messages, but after this deployment there are no what? Error messages. That means our deployment is what? Perfect. So that's why I can say deployment is completed. Now what is left here? Testing. Testing means we give request and a web component has to be executed and it has to generate what? One web page. So that's why test the web application. Test the web application, nothing but execute servlet component by giving request. By giving what? Request. Yes. To give request, we need a browser. In the browser address bar, if you type a URL, so and if you press enter key, automatically request will be generated. In the URL of browser address bar, HTTP localhost, what's the port number? 3030. Because my Tomcat is running on which port number? 3030 port number, right? So 3030, name of the web application. It's the syntax of the URL. Here 2 slashes, here 1 slash. They are part of URL syntax. Then I have to give URL pattern of the servlet. Why? You know that servlet is not identified with its class name. Servlet is identified with its what? URL pattern. That's why test 1. See, this is protocol. Cool. These are part of syntax, URL syntax. This is host name and port number of server where your application is there. Right now Tomcat server is there in my current computer and it is running on port number 3030. That's why we are referring current computer with a local host and port number is mentioned. But in one server, so many web applications will be there. It will get the clarity. Request has to go to which web application based on this web application name, which is also called context path or context route. What is this? Context path or context route. Root or web application name. Web root folder simply becomes web application name. Test 1, URL pattern of the servlet. URL pattern of the servlet component. Yeah, once again observe this. Protocol, host name and port number of Tomcat server where your application is running. In that server, what is the web application? Date app. In one web application, there is a chance of having multiple components also. That's why, which component? Servlet component. But Servlet component is identified with the class name, a URL pattern. URL pattern. Yes, that's why URL pattern. Just take this, copy it. See, once server is started, it will be in continuously running mode. Open browser, any browser you can take, in fact. Say paste, enter key. Yes, we got a output. We got a web page. So don't think that it is a normal HTML file based web page. We have given request to Tomcat server. Tomcat server taken the request and pass it to date app application based on the URL. Within the web application of date app, component whose URL pattern test1 is executed. Nothing but date servlet is executed. That is generated output. Okay, output is given to response object through PrintWriter. Response object passes to container. Container passes to server. Server gives that output to what? Browser as response. And browser is what? Displaying what? That content as web page content. But while displaying web page content, how does it know format of the content? Based on the MIME type, text/HTML. So it is taking HTML code and displaying as a text document. How can you say it's a dynamic web page? Very simple. Say refresh, changing, refresh, changing, refresh, changing, refresh, changing. That means based on the time of request generation, the content of the web page is changing. That's a dynamic web page. I said no, Servlet is not identified with its what? Class name or logical name. What's the logical name? Date. Error. What's the class name? com.nt.servlet.dateServlet. Yes, error. But you try to give URL pattern, it is recognized. What's the advantage? Based on URL pattern, we can hide the Servlet class name from outsiders. Indirectly, we are hiding the technology of the website. Due to this, hackers takes time to know the technology of the website and to hack the website. Because if you officially expose the technology of the website, it becomes easy for hackers to hack the website. That's why we observe in real time, in real website also. Until they come and declare, we don't know the technology that is used in Google, Gmail and other popular websites. So because we have to hide the technology, because every technology will have a loophole. Because of loophole, hackers may come and attack it. So it's better to hide the technology as long you can hide it. As long as you can hide it. So these are the various steps related to what? First web application development. Please look at this video in connection with what? Previous video, because I have kept this entire application development in the form of two videos. Part 1, Part 2. Let me summarize all the steps that we have followed. Number 1, create deployment directory structure. Number 2, develop Servlet component. Number 3, add jar file to class path servlet-api.jar. Number 4, compile Servlet component. Number 5, develop Web.xml configuring Servlet component. Number 6, start the Tomcat server. Number 7, deploy the web application. Copy that folder to web apps folder. Number 8, okay, just test the application. Okay, follow these steps. Okay, but not only I talked about development of web application, I have analyzed each and every line that we have written in the code, every step that we have written in the code. So how all these things will be internally used together, I'm going to talk in my next video. Thank you. Have a nice day.